In this chapter, we want to cover some of the core drawing principles inside of Illustrator. To start this off, we want to create a new document. Now, the last time I created a new document, I was using the print profile. You can come up to the File menu, and under the File menu, you can choose New, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Command-N, which would be Control-N on the Windows side, and that will open up the New Document dialog box. But if you know you want to use the same profile, you can use a keyboard shortcut, which is Option-Command-N on the Mac. It would be Alt-Control-N on the Windows side. So if I go ahead and use that keyboard shortcut, it just creates a new document based upon that profile. So what we want to take a look at are the basic drawing tools inside of Illustrator. There's a ton of drawing tools inside of Illustrator. We want to look at some of these basic shapes. If you come over to the Tools panel, you'll notice that there is the Rectangle tool. Now, with many of these tools, you'll see a little triangle down in the bottom right-hand corner. That simply means that there's hidden tools underneath the Rectangle tool. M is the keyboard shortcut to access the Rectangle tool. So if you press M, you'll select the Rectangle tool. But what I want to point out in this case are the hidden tools. If you click and hold down, it will reveal all of the hidden tools underneath the Rectangle tool. So not only do we have the Rectangle tool, we have a rounded Rectangle tool, an ellipse tool, a polygon tool, a star tool, and a flare tool. Now, if you think you're going to be working with these tools extensively, it's my recommendation to come over here and select this little arrow right here. You'll notice as you mouse over it, it becomes highlighted. When you let go of the mouse, you get what's called a tear-off. And this tear-off is a mini panel that floats around, giving you quick access to all of these tools. Nevertheless, I have the Rectangle tool selected. And with the Rectangle tool selected, to create a rectangle, the process is pretty easy. Just move the crosshair into the document and click and drag. When you click and drag, you're going to create the square or the rectangle. If you want to create a square, hold down the Shift key and you'll constrain it to a square. Otherwise, you can create a rectangle. Unless you're really good, you might be able to create a square by accident. Nevertheless, here is the shape. If you decide at some point that you don't really want the shape to be positioned here, you'll notice as I click and drag, it's always going to be based upon that initial place where I clicked. That's essentially the anchor point. So that's the starting point of the shape regardless of the direction that I go in. If you decide that you really want this shape to be in the bottom left corner of the document, as you're dragging, so you're still holding down the mouse button, hold down the space bar on the keyboard, then you have the ability to move it as you're drawing that shape. So once you let go of the space bar, you basically reset it. When you let go of the mouse, you draw the shape. Now when you draw the shape, we kind of reviewed this earlier, you can essentially manipulate the appearance of it by controlling stroke attributes, which are available up here in the control panel. You can choose things like a stroke color, but you can also choose a stroke weight and a lot of other options up here towards the top. And if you want to use a fill color, you have that ability as well. You'll just have to hold down this inkwell to reveal this swatch panel, and then you can choose a fill color. So there are a lot of options up here towards the top. I did want to show you a couple of other things that you can do when drawing. If you click in one space, as you saw earlier, that's essentially the starting point for the shape. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Sometimes it's easier to draw out from the center, and you can do that. What you need to do is hold down the Option key on the Mac, the Alt key on Windows. When you do that, watch the cursor. You get these brackets to appear around the cursor, which is just a visual indicator that you're about to draw this shape out from the center. So if I click and drag, you can see the center is the anchor point for the shape. And if I hold down the Shift key, I can create a square. And if you have your smart guides enabled, as you draw out, you get a heads-up display giving you a readout of the width and height values. Another way to create a shape, especially if you know the exact size that it needs to be, is to simply click. When you click, a dialog box appears and you can punch in the width and height values for the shape. So if I want it to be 150 by 150, I just plug in those values and I click OK, and there's the shape. I'm going to go ahead and delete these shapes. I'm going to choose the Selection tool. I'm just going to click and drag a marquee around them, and then I'm going to press the Delete key on the keyboard to get rid of them. Another thing that I want to show you is the Rounded Rectangle tool. Just like the Rectangle tool, it works in the exact same way, except you have the added advantage of creating rounded corners. Now, as you click and drag, if you decide you want to change the radius of the corners, you can do that by using the up arrow key on the keyboard or the down arrow key on the keyboard. If you hold down the Shift key, you'll increase or decrease the corner radius in greater increments. So here you can see I'm increasing it. I'm just holding down the Shift key and I'm holding the up arrow. If I switch this to hold down the Shift key and the down arrow, you'll notice that the corner radius is reducing. So a lot of flexibility there in terms of the corner radius. You can let go of the Shift key if you don't want to create a square. Of course, when you click, you can plug in the width and height values, but you can also type in the corner radius value as well. I'll go ahead and cancel out of that. Finally, there's the ellipse tool. The ellipse tool, it's no great mystery. It gives you the ability to create ellipses and circles. If you hold down the Shift key, it'll be a circle. And all the same things apply. You can hold down the space bar to move it. And if you hold down the Option key or the Alt key, you can draw an ellipse or a circle out from the center. And once the shape is selected, you can completely change its appearance by using these options up here inside the control panel. There are other ways to control the appearance, which is something we'll get into a little bit later on. But for right now, if you want to change the appearance of the fill and the stroke, you can use the control panel. You'll also see that you can control the stroke and the fill here inside the Tools panel. You can even swap it. You can press D on the keyboard to set it to the default, and you can press X on the keyboard to swap the fill and the stroke color values. So there you have it. That's working with some of the basic shapes. In the next movie, we'll continue to look at some of the different shapes that you can use to create artwork inside of Illustrator.